again, everyone, welcome to the 2025 Virtual Safety Seminar Series. This one is specific for coaches and instructors, or anyone that's just interested in becoming a coach or instructor. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Dustin Renz. Dustin is the CSPA Coaching Working Committee Chair. So he's been sitting in the chair position now for a couple months. But yeah, he is very active in the sport of skydiving. He's got pretty much every rating. He's about to go get his PFFI as well as a learning facilitator for Coach 1, and hopefully in the next couple months, Coach 2 and the SSI courses as well. I'm sure Dustin will give his own introduction. But again, thank you guys so much for joining Gord and I here at Skydive Vancouver Island for this seminar. And so I'm going to pass the floor over to you, Dustin. It's all yours.
All right, just give me a second. I'm working off of one screen today, so I've been playing around with how this works. Hopefully it shows up okay. Looks like it's working to me, and Brian's giving a thumbs up right on. So hi everyone. I didn't really go through the gallery to see who's all kicking around, but it looks like a lot of familiar the faces here. So good to see everyone. So this is well, it kind of started off with these seminars as a safety seminar. So this is going to kind of be a bit of that, but it's also will be a bit of an update from the CSPA side of things. Donnie, you look nice and comfy in your hotel room bed. So yeah, I'll go through a few different points, and if there's any questions or anything like that along the way, just feel free to ask away. Um, it's sort of anytime I'm trying to think and get my head back in the game, I find that actually making PowerPoints are a helpful thing for me. Even when I'm working on different courses, the first thing I do is sit and put together PowerPoint to try to get my head wrapped around everything. So this is just going to be sort of my thoughts as we get back rolling into the season. Um, they might not necessarily be the same as everyone else's thoughts. So if anybody else has any points or useful safety thoughts and tips as we go back into the season, please feel free to put your hand up and speak. So this is going to be the general flow. It's not going to take an hour and a half. Sorry to disappoint everyone. But I'm going to more or less talk about some risk management, safety culture, different safety protocols, leading by example, instructor safety, and taking care of yourselves, and an update with things that are kind of going on with the CSPA and CWC. This isn't obviously an official CWC engagement, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. So this kind of the theme for me for the presentation tonight more or less has to do with attitudes and safety cultures. So I always throw this little one in there as kind of my goal for this is to not necessarily sit here and lecture everybody about stuff that they should already know on negligence and risk management and all that good stuff. But um, it's a little difficult on Zoom, but it's more like having a campfire and shooting the breeze around the fire pit. So definitely chime in if there's anything that you want to say. I realize it's a little unnatural on Zoom, but feel free to raise your hand. So with regards to risk management, that's a whole big uh, overarching principle to talk about. And when we think about safety, we usually in skydiving just think about physical safety, but there's a lot of other factors that go into it, right? There are mental safety, and that goes into a whole bunch of other sort of subcategories about being accessible, and people feel comfortable asking questions, and that sort of thing will go a long way in the sport as well. So I think the big takeaway is don't be a jerk. Be Put yourself out there. Uh, be the person that everyone's comfortable with asking questions, because chances are they're not just going to go and wing it with some YouTube video rather than asking the right people the right questions. Um, I know I said I wouldn't talk too much about this, but um, I changed my mind anyway. But real quick, so basically, negligence is well, there's two sorts of levels of negligence in law in Canada, but we're mostly talking with like civil negligence, which is basically a standard of care that a reasonable person, so like a reasonable coach or instructor in a similar situation would do, and that if not done, it would lead to some sort of harm or damage. So basic concepts like following the basic safety rules, the technical recommendations, really anything that's in writing should be followed, because some lawyer could tear it apart at some point in time. So the rules are there for a reason. Uh, cover your butts. It's not worth $30 to lose your house, right? Um, One of the big takeaways for me, I think, in the last season was identifying and assessing risks sort of ahead of time. Um, in skydiving, we see a big variety of different people with different diverse backgrounds. And sometimes it's hard to identify some potential problematic people, we'll say. I did do a slide a little bit later, kind of my thoughts on that too. So, um, yeah, maybe be good for some dialogue there to discuss what other people would do in similar situations. So yeah, risk management is about identifying and assessing risks ahead of time rather than letting everything compound to become problems, right? Uh, Creating a safety first environment. So that's everything from being, proactive with gear checks, or teaching a student about winds or landing patterns. Everything should always be a learning opportunity when it comes to safety. The more you do those sorts of things, the more encouraging of a safety learning environment is going to be. So, ensuring the participants understand the risks. Um, Ashley sort of touched on this last week with her presentation, um, that you shouldn't underestimate the danger on any jump, on any given jump, and neither should your students or novices. So there should be no confusion as to the fact that the sport is dangerous when somebody is signing up for a first jump course. And to disillusion somebody otherwise would be kind of inappropriate. So, not to say you need to scare the crap out of them in the first line of the course if you're teaching the first jump course, but it is important people do understand that there is actually a risk of hurting themselves. They should by this point, because it's assuming they've signed waivers, and but yeah, it's always good to reiterate that, just to kind of cover your butts down the road if anything were to go wrong. kind of talked about this already, but the goal is to mitigate and prevent risks and problems. As we know that anytime there's um, an injury or a fatality or anything like that, that it's never just one thing that happens. It's always a series of different small contributing factors, and sometimes it's often just a bunch of little things that contribute to one big thing. So, uh, uh, here's my very analytical graph of my issues risk continuum. So it's basically what we're talking about, right? For every little problem, the risk exponentially goes up. So do your best. Skydiving is not a risk-free sport, obviously, but you always need to do your best to prevent those little things from building up. All right, safety culture. So this doesn't just necessarily apply to coaches and instructors, but everyone is responsible to create a safe environment, a respectful environment. It should be welcoming to all walks of people. I know all that stuff should kind of go without saying, but uh, skydiving is actually one of the sports that seems to be actually doing better in this regard because there is a pretty good variety of people. I'm always fascinated to see all the backgrounds of different people at different drop zones. It's pretty cool. With that said, there's of course always opportunities to improve, and not everything is picture perfect and peachy when it comes to that sort of thing either. Safety culture is about emergency preparedness. So don't wait for something to happen to decide how to respond. Um, you should be considering things that can and may and will go wrong ahead of time, so that way you're prepared to react. Your drop zone should have some form of emergency action plan. You should know where first aid kits, the how your drop zone is going to activate emergency services, that sort of thing. AED locations. Uh, know the community supports. There's lots of people in CSPA that are good resources for this sort of thing. So don't be afraid to reach out to anybody. Um, and that's not just necessarily for like positive support, but also support in handling maybe safety issues or that sort of thing, trouble like problematic students, etc. Um, Safety culture is also about positive reinforcement. If you are, don't be negative. If you're constantly, belittling people or not creating a positive learning and safety environment, people are going to be afraid to ask questions. People are going to wing it and try things that they shouldn't try. So, um, be positive when you're teaching. I know that was a big thing on like the SSI course, for example, is always um, positive reinforcement versus focusing on the negative. So yeah, don't be a jerk. So I whipped up this little graph about an hour ago. Um, like, oh, what are kind of the key components to a safety culture? And to be honest, I stole a little bit of this, I think, from some schools safety culture thing that I found on Google, but I thought it fit pretty good and I adjusted it to skydiving. So the pillars as I see them is leading by example, which we'll talk about a little bit later, or probably in the next slide. I can't remember, but promoting a positive safety attitude, teaching safety awareness, being respectful, uh, providing safety guidelines, and being approachable. So, with any one of those kind of missing, we don't have a full solid safety culture. So, I'm sure there's a bunch more that we could probably sit and hammer out and think about that could work in there. But those were the ones that sort of came to mind for me as I was thinking through this. Safety protocols. So, of course, we have a number of established safety protocols in skydiving within our skydiving system here in Canada. So, following the established safety protocols is the way to go. Um, there's, industry standards. There's policy standards, and you don't want to be put into a situation where you're deviating from those and opening up yourselves to liability or negligence, particularly when you're dealing with a novice or somebody who's never skydived before. Last thing you want to do is to get caught not following a basic safety rule. Um, Gear checks is one that I always harp on all the courses that I teach because it's the single most neglected thing that, from my perspective, that seems to happen all the time. Um, I can't remember. I told someone the story the other day, but every coach course that I teach, I intentionally either undo an RSL or my chest strap or something like that. And I would say that 80% of the people do not find something that is blatantly obvious as like a disconnected RSL. And I know I work a lot with Brian doing evaluations and stuff on courses, and that's something that we kind of we go out of our way to make it obvious, and it's baffling how many people miss a chest strap not done up. Um, so I would empower you as coaches and instructors to don't just go through the checklist. You don't want to, on a checkout jump, for example, did the student do a gear check? Just because somebody goes, yep, good to go. That's that's not what we're trying to teach. And it often I think in the case, I think in a few cases, like I was teaching my dad to skydive, I left that disconnected, and it kind of scarred him. It haunted him a little bit, which is a great thing because you bet that he looked really detailed on the next gear check, right? So we should be instilling. I tell people, look for the problem that you know exists and be pleasantly surprised if you don't find anything. Enough about gear checks for now. Oh, look, Wade's coming in. Leading by example. So I have a whole other slide about that, but um, people are going to look up to you. If you tell them to do one thing and don't do it yourself, it's kind of useless. The best instruction is to like perform the behavior yourself. If I want to really drive the point home to do handles checks in the plane, I will awkwardly, obviously do my handles checks in front of the student or novice. And 99% of the time you'll see them, oh, it'll click in their brain and then they're going to start doing it. So demonstrate the behavior that you expect to see in it, and it works better than just saying, hey, do your handles check. um Course model proper landing techniques yourself if you're landing like crap all the time, and then you're giving and then telling your students or novices to do something differently, it doesn't necessarily bode well. Same goes for handling equipment, staying on top of emergency procedures, that sort of thing. Emergency procedures are another item that's sort of neglected a little bit, because everyone just does it when they get their next A, B, or C license, and they never think about it again, which is not really good way to kind of go about things. You should be reviewing emergency procedures regularly, um, practicing emergency procedures regularly. There's, if you bring your rig to a rigger for a repack, take the opportunity to practice your emergency procedures, those sorts of things, and encourage your students and novices, of course, to do the same. Um, where are we here? So adapt to changing conditions. What I meant by that is SVI is a really good example for this, but be cognizant that things can and do change from the time you get in the van, get to the airport, and get up in the air. Sometimes 45 minutes, maybe even an hour has passed, and conditions might have changed, right? So it's important to instill the knowledge into everyone else that don't just rely on. I guess what I'm trying to talk about here is what I see happening quite often is people will say, okay, yep, it's a left-hand landing pattern out in the field. An hour passes by, getting lunch, and then they still have it in their head that it's for sure going to be a left-hand landing pattern. And I've seen it happen a million times, but someone will get caught doing the wrong landing pattern because the wind has changed in that time. So, um, yeah, just reinforce that kind of critical thinking rather than just being monkeys and following a certain landing pattern, for example. So continuous learning, that's a big one for me. I've found in the past that, my first couple of years I'm getting skydiving, we have a kind of a big off season. And we don't really think about skydiving too much in the off season. And I remember like season number two, trying to pack my parachute. I'm like, how the hell did I do this? So it helps to keep your mind engaged in these off seasons, doing these sorts of things. I've been involved quite a bit with the CSPA and CWC over the last couple of winters. So I found that it's helped keep my brain rolling with this sort of thing also. So and encourage your students and offices to do the same sort of thing. These safety seminars are a great opportunity for that. Even if you're not a rigger, I wasn't a rigger until last year, but I've watched all the rigging seminars because it kind of just helps. You always learn something from it, and it just helps kind of get the wheels spinning again as the season ramps up. Uh, so yeah, like I mentioned earlier, safety is more than just physical. It's about mental safety. It's about having a welcoming environment, a community. Uh, you know, that's what most people signed up to do for skydiving, was to become part of a community. So I think we're all similar. We sort of look for similar things out of the skydiving community. So just try to put yourself in the shoes of a student or novice showing up to a drop zone, right? Everything's kind of overwhelming. Nobody really knows how everything works, and just think of those kind of people. Um, Another thing I wanted to mention with continuous learning is be receptive to doing courses that you thought you didn't want to do. Um, I told myself for years I would never be a rigger. Why would I ever be a rigger? Well, now I'm a rigger. Because at some point, open up to be, "Oh, I want to learn more about that sort of thing." And you know, there's always a benefit, even if you don't intend on using it, at least give it a try. Uh, a good example is ground control instructing. You get a lot of people on courses, oh, I don't want to do that, and they don't even give it a chance. But come out, just do the observations. It will improve your own personal abilities, even if you decide down the road to not do it. Um, and a lot of people never always say they never want to do the SSI course because I don't want to be stuck in a classroom. But I found, and I was sort of the same way, but I found for me that the SSI course was one of the most rewarding courses for me. Just learning how to teach other people, and then being able to be that first person to to represent skydiving and teach someone how to skydive is pretty cool. Of course, don't be a jerk. First impressions matter. So um, I won't call out the particular drop zone that I learned at, but um, if you're showing up to a drop zone and people are hungover and there's the classroom's in a broken beach chair, that sort of thing, it doesn't really foster a perspective of comfort. It sure didn't for me. I mean, I still skydive, but so just keep that in mind. Dress appropriately and those sorts of things. Be at your best self and represent the sport well. Because otherwise, people just keep thinking we're a bunch of hooligans. Looks like somebody's making a message, but I can't see it. So safety concerns and participants. Uh, I've encountered a few situations that I found were a little bit difficult to navigate involving questionable students and novices. So I just kind of threw my thoughts down here, and they're more generalized, but I'd love to hear if anybody else has some personal stories of dealing with these sorts of things and dealing with challenging or sketchy students, and how you handle it. So, um, regardless, you should be doing formative evaluations throughout the day. So watching people, seeing where they're struggling, seeing, maybe it's a difficulty learning or difficulty doing a physical task. Um, it, and try to apply that to an objective criteria. So rather than being like, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's doing, like, okay, what does he not know how to do, or what can he do? Because preparing, uh, Ryan likes the picture that was a chat GPT picture, actually. uh, but applying those thoughts to objective criteria will help you justify your position down the road. Um, Learn to recognize signs of uncertainty. Uh, of course, this is something you kind of build over time, and it would surprise you sometimes the people who actually end up pulling themselves off of a course. There might not exactly be the ones you expected, right? There won't necessarily be outward signs of uncertainty. Communicate clearly. So this is about setting the expectations. You have to be able to perform this in this time. You have to be able to, like the past criteria is perform an arch, for example. So I can think back to a situation not that long ago where this elderly gentleman signed up for a first jump course that had some sort of spinal back problem, but he couldn't. He was like permanently the opposite of arched, and he physically could not arch. And like, well, the objective criteria is that you need to be able to arch. Can you perform this? And if you objectify that criteria, it's often easier to handle it. And people will often lead themselves to the conclusion that maybe they ought to not go for the skydive. And of course, you have to ask yourself if the person is incapable or do they just require additional training. Um, of course, you'll have to engage your drop zone and see how they would want to handle those types of situations. Sometimes if you need an extra day of training, it does come at a cost, but at the end of the day, you don't want to allow someone to skydive that should not be skydiving. Teach positively, so don't focus on the negative. Is Leanne sleeping? Oh. So teach positive. I'm sorry to bore you, Leanne. Jeez. Uh, Teach positively, focus on the good things, not necessarily on the bad things, and be prepared to modify training. So you should always come with alternative ways of doing things. So I know that if someone's not getting how to do a front loop by laying on the ground because it's weird and awkward. I know that I can also use the edge of a picnic table to demonstrate the same thing. And I know that if that doesn't work, I can also use a video. So have backups and backups of backups, and be prepared to modify training to meet the needs of the students. Of course, if you ain't getting it, then maybe it's not appropriate for the jump. Like I mentioned earlier, involve the drop zone and see how they want to handle that type of situation. Don't necessarily scramble in the middle of a class to try to figure that out. If you're teaching for a drop zone, you should have a somewhat of an understanding of the people that you're working for and how they handle those sorts of situations. Um, and involve the student. So don't just you can't arch, so you can't go on a skydive. Uh, the one gentleman that I dealt with, I showed him like this is what I need you to do for this safety reason. Are you able to do this? And it was pretty easy to remove him from the course, and he ended up doing a tandem, and it's all good. At the end of the day, safety is non-negotiable. The 30 or $50 or whatever is not worth your house, um, is not worth someone getting seriously injured. Yeah, enough said about that. Before I go too far, does anybody have any examples of some challenges like that you've encountered dealing with students that were incapable of doing the skydive or maybe refuse to, step aside or that sort of thing? Looks like Leanne has examples. Of course she does. She's been around for half a century.
Yeah. Well, two extremes. There's been a couple of older people that have wanted to do the first jump course, and their mobility is clearly not up to doing arching or lifting their arms high to grab the toggle. So you just have to be not be afraid to say no, and because it's their safety. And they're like, oh, but I can do it. It's my last wish before I retire or whatever. But you just have to be you just have to say no, because it's their safety and the drop zone's liability. And then on the other extreme, you get very young, cocky, usually guys that think they know it all and they're not listening in the class, and you can also not be afraid to say no to those people as well. Those are my
Yeah,
examples.
yeah, that's some good points. I've definitely encountered both. And to your second example, I remember I remember what caused this individual to actually take himself off the course was me telling him that skydiving is actually dangerous, and then showing him the emergency procedures, and then he had a bellyache and never came back. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, that's a good
Uh,
one.
let's see. Skydive Vancouver Island has a hand raised. Take it away.
Oh, yeah, it's just me. Um, we had an individual who had gone for so many tandems, was so stoked about skydiving, um, signed up themselves and another person for the Learn to Skydive program, and had massive panic attack in the plane. And it was just one of those things where, we were very fortunate. The instructor she was with, recognized that anxiety, panic attack coming on. It was that difference of, not trying to commit. They were in the air, like in the air. Flying at altitude, door was getting ready to open and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, she flew down with the plane, but it was also recognizing the fact, like, how much I appreciated. I really respect people setting their own boundaries and being not comfortable and not going instead of putting our instructors at risk, themselves at risk, and all of that. And so, really, kind of more rewarded that positive approach. We did try other options. We talked about maybe GFF instead of PFF. She's since been for multiple more tandems, but yeah, and it's okay. And we just made her feel okay that the fact that not everybody is going to learn to skydive. And then there's also people that surprise you. You think they're going to be horrible and you have all this anxiety, and then they being a rock star student. So it's a really fine balance, I think, for the instructors. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to, run it past other people. If you're if you're on the fence, it's better to, get a second opinion than just making the call yourself. Wade, take it away. Wade is supposed to come over here, but apparently he's not here. So why don't you chime in there, Wade? You're muted and possibly driving to my house. Wade, you're still muted.
You're still muted.
Oh, there we go. Great. Sorry, I don't Zoom much. I just Teams. Um, yeah, I was just gonna say, when it comes to knowing your limit as an instructor, just one of the examples I remember as a brand new PFFI, and then being paired with Amir. And so someone who's quite a bit larger and has a very, very different fall rate, and wanting to get all my contacts finished, and just out of pure, wanting the challenge as well, but really knowing like where your limitations are as an instructor or as a coach, and where you should really uh, possibly just turn down the jump. And another option is based, on like not just size of your student, but also what your students like really wanting to learn, and like knowing like where your limitations as a coach are. Like if you're really a proficient free flyer, then yeah, maybe you should be coaching free flying. But maybe if you're not, like, don't be. So that was kind of the only thing I could think of to add there, is just like really knowing your limitations as a coach and leaning into it and being okay with turning down a jump or an opportunity to jump just for the extra whatever 20 or $50. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, to speak to the whole numbers thing, we all know back when we had like our A's and our B's and whatever, that like, oh, we gotta you gotta get the minimum numbers to get to the next level. Uh, it obviously happens as instructors and coaches too. Like you're sometimes a little too keen to take on some of the coach or instructor contacts just for the sake of getting through your portfolios and whatnot. So don't that shouldn't govern your decision to skydive, of course, right? And I'm wondering if Wade is in our driveway.
Wade is currently in our.
Oh, well, there you go. At least he wasn't driving. Uh, um, Stop it. Sorry. The dog really likes Wade. Um, so leading by example, this is something that we always hear and we always talk about, but what does it really mean? Um, that's a tough question, right? So I just kind of smashed out a bunch of points about what it actually means to me. We've already touched on some of these points, but these are kind of the big takeaways for me. Um, it's about having a positive attitude. Of course, you want to demonstrate to your students and novices what you expect of them. Safety should always be a core value and not the third thing. It should be the number one point. Set high expectations for safety. So sometimes I'll go out of my way to pretend or not pretend, but be extra obvious and like my concern for like, okay, it's really windy. Do I need to do this job? There's times where I'll sit out and students or not students, but novices will or less experienced people will still go and jump and jump and jump. And they're like, oh, why aren't you jumping? I'm like, oh, those winds are kind of sketchy. Like, and sometimes get some, in a different mindset, being, not invincible. Walk the talk. So practice what you preach. Set your expectations. I don't know where it's. Oh, I see. Wait. And reinforce the idea that everyone owns safety. It's not just on you as the instructor or coach, but it's also on your novice, and you want to set them up to have that safety mindset. You want to give them the skills to be safe and be educated and well informed. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about more instructor safety like pertaining to yourselves and self-care and that sort of thing. Of course, personal safety is important. If you are not focusing on your own gear checks, recognizing, to what Wade said, the limits of your experience, then it could be a recipe for issues, right? Know when to set it out. If you're not feeling good or you're hungover, had too much mead the night before, and you need to sit it out. Sit it out. It's not worth it. Physical health and fitness is important. I know we all like to eat very unhealthy and all that good stuff at the drop zone, except for me. But those all play a factor in your fitness. Warm up, stretch, drink lots of water, all those good things, right? Don't be stinky. Also, nobody wants a stinky tandem instructor. Mental health and focus. So, kind of talks about, kind of speaks to the hungoverness type of thing. Nobody should be going into the skydive hungover, let alone with a student or a novice. But make sure your head's in the game. We all have moments and days where we're off, and it's better to just sit those days out and chill. And there's always going to be another skydive, and there'll always be another contact to get. Continuing education. I already kind of beat this one to death, but there's lots of resources for continuing education. Like these seminars, there's tons of resources on the CSPA website. There's now an entire section on the CSPA website that is just resources like the sport canopy endorsements and all that good stuff. And Continuing education could be something as easy as reviewing the PIMS in the middle of winter, something like that. But consider taking courses, going to seminars. If you have an opportunity to go to the PIA, do that, and just kind of seek any opportunity you can. And continuing education as an instructor or coach is also, I have a lot of newer coaches or instructors that haven't delivered a lot of like main packing endorsement courses and things. So continuing education for you would be to shadow somebody doing that sort of thing. So take those opportunities and reach out to the folks around you. Modeling self-care. So, demonstrate healthy habits for your students, take breaks, drink lots of water, don't drink too much all night. Oops, I went too far ahead there. And again, lead by example. All right. Wow, that took a lot more time than I thought. So that's kind of it for what I had for the coach and instructor safety side of things. Again, I wasn't not my goal to just reiterate things that everybody should already know, but it's a good thing to kind of just refresh our brains as we go into a new season after having a few months off. Is there any questions or points that anybody'd like to make with that side of things before I move on to the CSPA update? Sorry, I have like two screens going here. I didn't read all these comments yet. Any
So
coaching
far,
questions?
I don't see any questions that are coming from the floor for you, Dustin, although Beth does think that you should re-title this presentation, Don't Be a Dick.
Don't be a dick. Yeah,
Don't be
that's
a-
well, that was going to be the title, but Ashley didn't seem impressed with the terminology.
Uh,
Uh,
So Dustin, there's a question from Jamie. I don't know if it's a question. So do coaching courses, oh, this is just a recommendation. Do coaching courses even if they are non-skydiving related? So you can
right,
find
that's a great point.
lots of courses on the CAC.
Yeah, so I've done a bunch of just random CAC courses. Safe Sport's a good one. There's there's courses on how to um for teaching techniques and that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely use take those. In fact, at the learning facilitator level, the courses that we have to do with the CAC are not skydiving specific. So the courses that we had to do were like I sat in a course with ringette and some horse sport and all that good stuff. So yeah, they are valuable to get different perspectives from different sports and how they do things. All right, Beth, you have something to say?
I actually had a question that is not necessarily related to your presentation, but maybe you can help. And it's about caring for ourselves as coaches and instructors. Thoughts or tips on protecting ourselves from a liability standpoint. You've talked about losing our house and, making good decisions not to put that sort of thing at risk. But what can we do to protect ourselves?
That's a good question. The number one thing that you can do is if there is a policy written down, you should be following it. If it's in writing, whether it be called a basic safety rule or a technical recommendation, those are hard and fast rules that if you're not following, it opens you up to a lot of liability. As everyone should already know, that a technical recommendation, and I really hate the term technical recommendation, and I've been pushing to have them change this term, but it is not a recommendation. It is a hard and fast rule that can't be that's not optional. It's not actually a recommendation, it's a requirement. Unless there's, of course, you can can get a waiver to it, but it has to be in writing and from CSPA. But if there's something in writing that you didn't follow, that's a rule, and you're not following it, whether it be not following the win requirements or doing jumps that you're not supposed to be doing in terms of groups of people and whatnot, that's going to open yourself up to liability. Yes, Allison.
Oh,
Just to kind of expand for you there, Beth, I'm going to just speak to the instructor coach. If you're a staff, be it contract, be it part-time, be it full-time, you should definitely talk to your drop zone owners. That should be included in the waiver, whether you're a rigger, packer. So I could just speak to Gordon and I at Skydive Vancouver Island. Anyone who works for us staff-wise, again, be it contractor, part-time, casual, rigger, packer, they are covered in our waiver. That doesn't mean we couldn't get sued, and you could be named on all of that, but the waiver that the customer signs covers everybody as well. So that is something, for people that just check with your drop zone and check what their waivers actually state.
yeah, thanks. That's very helpful, and that's more what I'm concerned about. I can follow the rules, we can follow the rules, but sometimes the non-jumping public interprets the rules in a different way, and they decide to proceed with legal action that we might have every defense against, but maybe there's insurance or something to we still have to pay for that lawyer to defend us. So just wondering on best practices, if there's director's insurance for a company or personal insurance, but it may be out of scope for this presentation. So it was just a thought for discussion.
Gordon will add to that.
So you also have access to the legal defense fund. Mm-hmm. So the legal defense fund is initially designed to just cover drop zones, but it also actually extends to RPs as well. So such as yourself, coaches and instructors. So there's $15,000 worth of legal defense fund coverage that's designed to go towards your legal bills. The waiver in Canada has been challenged a few times and it's never been beaten. And so usually what will happen is that if somebody is taken to court, it's defending the waiver initially is what's required. And so CSPA recently increased the defense fund from $10,000 to $15,000. And that should be lots to be able to help somebody out in the event of a lawsuit.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
Pat work for free.
All right. Let's move on. So if there's no other points or questions, we'll move kind of into the CSPA update side of things. So to just back this up a little bit, I've been on the CWC for 2 years, I think now, or something like that. So there's been a lot of kind of changes, lots of both in the policies and kind of structure, but also personnel in and out and that sort of thing. So we're getting to a stage now that is a little more stable, I guess you could call it. So we've been rolling out some pretty exciting stuff and keeping on top of things and whatnot. Of course, everybody's a volunteer, so there can be challenges with time commitments and that sort of thing. So I'll talk a little bit about the 2025 updates and some of the mid-season 2024 updates that we did. Mid-season updates are kind of a contentious thing because some people really hate it because we're changing stuff in the middle of the season. And then other people really hate that we don't change stuff in the middle of the season. So can't make everyone happy, but we changed the ACOP privileges. So as you may or may not be aware that there are circumstances in which an ACOP jumper can do a three-way now. So this has allowed some drop zones to do a more staggered approach to building up to the group formation skydive, which is pretty cool. in CSPA, we're not really in the business of telling drop zones and how they must do their program, but we set, of course, the minimum standards. And as the coaching committee, the committee responsible for training, we actually we don't have the sole power to do any adjustments. All we do is recommend changes and adjustments to the board of directors. So if you have a problem, blame it on the board of directors. One who's sitting across the table from you right now. So another change that was very well received was the Coach 2 portfolio. There was a lot of contacts in the Coach 2 portfolio before. Not that we don't believe in the importance of having contacts, but there were significant challenges that were kind of noticed across the country in the ability to achieve the contacts within a reasonable amount of time. Also, it's something we identified was kind of a lack of attention to some of the other privileges of a coach too, like uh, delivering certain endorsements and whatnot. So now there's the addition of practical requirements and shadowing for those sorts of things. So so far nothing but good feedback about that. Not really sure what I was trying to talk about there, but I took over as CWC chair a couple months ago, or I guess in like fall or whatever. We welcomed a couple new people onto the committee, and we seem to have a pretty robust team right now that's committed to getting things done, which is really cool. Um, some of the exams were updated. I haven't gone through the actual changes of it, but I do know that they were changed and will be rolling out this year. So kind of a note to the SSEs on this one. If there are, and at being an SSE for a few years, going through like one of the A license exams, and, there's a question, I can't remember it offhand. I'm like, oh yeah, everyone gets that one wrong because it doesn't make sense. If those things happened, please highlight it or write it down, come up with a complaint list and provide it to us at the end of the season, because we'll definitely make the adjustments. Hell, we can go in and make the adjustments in the middle of the season. That's no problem. We just need that information. I was guilty of it too. Like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. So I'll just mark it right. It's not the right way to do it, right? Give that feedback and we'll definitely make the changes. A little bit of adjustment to the application forms. Not too much, but the application forms are, we noticed that a lot of the typical process that's to be expected is the individual meet all the minimum performance requirements and they go see the SSE who would fill out the rest of the stuff. But we found that people were like signing on an angle, putting their CSPA numbers in the corner, saying that they did this part but not this part, and so we actually made it a little bit more clear of actually having a spot for CSPA numbers and that sort of things to do the verifications. As far as I know, the only actual adjustment to any of the performance requirements and any of the COPs or certifications is the for the solo. And the only thing that was tweaked was it was a little bit confusing on the application form, was kind of contrary or a little bit different to the PFFI manual. So the hop and pop now is a little bit more flexible in terms of how that's performed. So it's just there. It gives, I think, a range of altitude that you can do it from now. Not sure if I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself on this, but my understanding is that some of the winds, I think, as a BCOP, is going to be adjusted.
It did not go through.
Never mind. It's not being adjusted. So I assumed that that would just go through. So another thing we identified, actually, thankfully to some feedback, was the BSR. I think it's 2.8, where it requires a student to be accompanied through all phases of the skydive, as long as they're still a student. Now, in practical terms, that is impossible to achieve on a first jump course IAD progression. And it's something that's recognized. Well, we thought long and hard about this and bounced a bunch of ideas back and forth, because like, we're not expecting, like, it's not practical that a jump master is going to jump with every student that they dispatch. It's not reality, right? So I think we came up with some good terminology that's going to reflect the realities of that. And again, for the PFF progression towards the end, and where the students performing the solo jumps as well. So keep your eye out for those changes that'll be rolled out soon. Some projects. PIM 2A was completely dismantled and re-put together, reworded, and rejigged. If you're familiar with PIM 2B, and like the sport canopy endorsements, how it, the visuals and the graphics and all that good stuff, it's going to follow that same sort of look and feel. My kind of goal is to amalgamate as much kind of fragmented documents and stuff that seem to be everywhere, into more of a consolidated area. And future proofing things is a big thing for me, because if you change one little thing in this, and then all of a sudden there's 10 other documents that you have to fix it. So I'm trying to prevent those things from happening. With that said, PIM 2A, my understanding is that the translations are all finished and they're just finalizing or finishing up graphics right now. And PIM 2A should be rolled out hopefully in the near future. And then our next goal is to merge PIM 2A and 2B together to just have PIM 2, because they kind of duplicate a lot of information. We've undertaken a task right now to review the sport canopy endorsement. One of our new committee members identified some problematic language in certain sections. So this kind of kicked off a full comprehensive review of sport canopy endorsements. So if this isn't something that's going to be done, in the probably before the end of the season, but if there's something that you think belongs in there, or suggestions, comments, concerns, reach out, because now's the time to make those adjustments, right? We're all pretty cognizant that we all have a role to play in the committee. We're not all experts in every area. So I'm not going to profess to be an expert in all this, but definitely would more rely on people who are the experts to have input, right? The there's been a lot of new people in CSPA, a lot of diversity, and there's been a lot of kind of changes for the good. So now's the time to like make it what we want. So don't be reluctant to reach out for anything. We are looking at ways to include wingsuiting into the DCOP. This came from a suggestion from an instructor, which I think is a great idea. I'm not a wingsuiter, as much as I don't like wingsuiters. I think it's a good idea. Um, Wingsuit Coach 3. Also, there's been some suggestions surrounding the availability to access manufacturers' courses, and how to obtain a Coach 3 without one. So that's in the very early stages of looking at that, but there might be some tweaks down the road. And just recently, as of like a couple of weeks ago, the Coach 3 canopy formation just rolled out. So this in the early stages of it still, but that's going to be a program that's going to be available more widely as we kind of ramp up and getting people qualified as coach threes and canopy formation. All right, my thoughts on kind of CSPA. So we all like to complain. I share that. You know, why does CSPA do it? This is stupid, or they're taking too long. Uh, it's an opportunity to get involved. So it really annoyed me how long it was taking people to get their COPs. We'd send it into the office, and sometimes 2 or 3 weeks to get it back. So I volunteered basically to take on that role. So every problem is just an opportunity waiting to be fixed. So I think there's been a general kind of perspective that everything's very unapproachable in CSPA, and that's not the image that I want, at least for, I don't think anybody wants it, but for my committee, we're definitely, if someone sends an email, it goes on to a task list and we do look at it, we do discuss it, and I will send a response. So we are accessible. Keeping in mind, we're all volunteers. So if you are just complaining for the sake of complaining, not really helpful. Come up with solutions, not just problems. So, for example, the wingsuit DCOP guy said, "Oh, we should add this in." I'm like, okay, come up with the wording and why it should be that wording, and then we'll talk about it. And he went to town and did it, and yeah, it helps get things rolling, especially if there's something you feel deeply about already. Put the work in and let's get it done. We'll make it happen. Reach out whenever you want. Like I said, we're really responsive. I'm really responsive to those sorts of things. Sometimes things might get a little bit backed up, but uh, definitely address or at least give you a response. Um, Keep in mind, there's oftentimes a lot of interests in skydiving that compete with each other. What works for a drop zone in Vancouver Island is not going to work for a drop zone in Quebec. So we have to kind of come up with a happy medium for everybody. And at the end of the day, our goal is to support drop zones, which are, people's businesses and livelihoods. So we do have to uh, go in with that sort of mindset. If you have a bunch of small corrections, make a list. If you notice wording or there's an apostrophe missing from an exam, please don't send an email about it. Make a list and we'll fix it all, I promise. But those things just kind of pollute the focus. We'll definitely, I hate grammar problems in the exams too, but so just keep a list, fire it off at the end of the year, and we'll definitely look at it. Um, Whining in private accomplishes nothing. Lots of people like to complain about, oh, I don't know why I don't do it this way, or why don't they do the instructor course or the instructor ratings like they did in the 1980s? And like, okay, why don't you bring your ideas forward rather than complain to each other? Um, more than happy to hear any constructive feedback. Yeah, and work with people to let's make this sport what we want it to be. We have a really, really good opportunity to do that now. And lastly, and most importantly, and this one's for Beth,
Uh-oh.
don't be a dick.
Thanks, Dustin. That's perfect. I like the picture too.
I thought you would. Is there any questions about any of all that stuff? That took way. I totally thought this was going to take a half an hour. Let me.
We have a question from Jamie. I will ask you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Right. Hey, Dustin. I just got that email for the mentorship program update, which is kind of cool. But what's the, I suppose for myself who's been mentoring for years, how is it different to what we're already doing? Like what changes?
That's an excellent question. And the mentorship program is actually not a CWC project. It's a Allison project. So I'll let her speak to that.
Hey, Jamie. So yes, the mentorship program is a project through the Women's Initiative Committee originally. I am the chair for the Women's Initiative Committee and the chair for the Long-Term Athlete Development, so LTAD. And so it's kind of an umbrella under both. The difference is that the mentorship program through CSPA was actually designed in partnership with Sport Canada as a requirement for women in our sport. So the mentorship program in the past was only for women, as it was defined by CSPA. So CSPA has never had a kind of more structured mentorship program, even though many of you and many people mentor all the time, especially as coaches and instructors. So the WIC team and myself, and with lots of help from Michelle and others as well, we have kind of more of a structured program around it. It's as a guide. We have identified, obviously, we've opened up applications for mentors. There's applications for mentees, and it's for everyone. And so it's not only just for, that novice jumper or that new jumper. It's also for people that want discipline specific. It's also for coaches, instructors, LFs, SSEs. It's riggers. There's also a category for navigating the drop zone. So if you've been injured in the sport, you're looking to get back in the sport. If you are someone who has been injured skydiving and are now back in the sport, you can mentor. We've lost people out of the fear of coming back to the sport. Obviously we lose women a lot in our sport for other reasons that aren't just around the skydiving skills. So it's kind of a way bigger thing on that. And once we kind of go there, the program is really well outlined right now on the CSPA website. I don't know if this will share with you guys, so just holler at me if it doesn't. But I did pull it up. Can you guys see that okay? Can you see it, Gord?
Yeah.
So if you actually look right under Learn, there's a mentorship program. Is it changing with you guys? Yeah. Okay, perfect. And so right here, this is the mentorship program. So it kind of just does the brief outline of it all. It shows you all the different categories now. And at the bottom are kind of examples, the attachments of the guides. So for example, if we just click on this one here, did it show? Oh, perfect. So it just kind of shows the structure, the components, the roles and responsibilities, and then there's feedback as well. I'm going to stop sharing that. So to the point, bear with me. I need to just get back to where I am. Sorry, I got people handing me stuff. Yeah, so it's putting more structure around it, but still flexibility. It can be done virtually. It can be done in person. We've got, we'll be pairing people together. So I can certainly, hopefully that kind of gives you an intro. I encourage you all to go read the kind of the write-up about it all. And then if you have any questions, you can email myself. The email's at the bottom of that page. So yeah, Jamie, I hope that kind of helps answer. It goes to a continued education, right? Because it's not just about the novice or beginner skydiver. It's about the new coaches. It's about coach ones wanting to become coach twos. It's about a new PFFI. It's about a new tandem instructor. It's all of those things to give you guys some mentorship with each other as well, and help develop you on a continuous basis.
All right.
Oh, yeah. And also, sorry, my husband just reminded me of the fact too. We piloted this a couple of years ago. So it's also to give accessibility to mentoring to those that might not be able to get it at their drop zone or in locations they are. So we piloted it a couple of years ago and kind of worked with it over a year to someone up in the Yukon with somebody paired up from Manitoba. So, and it was amazing. So that's kind of, it's all about accessibility as well. Did that help? Okay, cool. Sorry, Dustin, that kind of.
You take it away. Is there any other questions, comments, concerns? That's it.
No questions, but it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne.
And if we have no more questions for Dustin from Gordon and I and Skydive Vancouver Island, first off, thank you very much for taking the time to put this presentation together for us. I know we've been doing the CWC one now for 4 years, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into it on your side. So really appreciate you guys taking the time, and especially giving us the CWC updates as well, because it's all part of it. And I think as coaches and instructors and facilitators, we should all be making sure we're up to date with what's actually happening at CSPA, and times are changing, and it's really wonderful things. So thank
yeah, as the most important committee, I feel like it's important for us to relay as much
we
information
shall
as possible.
argue that on a different call. I don't know. I sit on technical and safety too, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyways, I also wanted to just thank everyone who attended this call. We do this for you guys as well, and we're always open to the feedback from anyone too. So feel free to email us at Skydive Vancouver Island for any of your feedback too. This will be recorded. I will be posting it on our. We have a YouTube channel. It's the SVI Safety Seminars, but I'll be putting that on as well. And as I said earlier, for those of you that might not have been on the call, next week, so next Tuesday, we have our rigor and packing safety seminar. It is going to be presented by the Technical and Safety Committee Chair, Bill Pentney, and team. It's more of a question and answer type format. It's pretty awesome. And even if you're not a rigger or a packer, you pack for yourself, you're definitely welcome to come on that. There's going to be some great discussions that I already know of on there. The following Tuesday, we will have the UPT Tandem Instructor Safety Seminar. This one has been going on for 5 years. In fact, Bill Booth has attended in the past as well. It's pretty crazy. And it's going to be put on by UPT examiner John Kieran, and he'll also have Erica Dufour on the call as well. And then to wrap up the safety seminars, the last Tuesday of April, we have Jean LaRoche of Keen to Lean giving a presentation on movement specific to track and angle. And I'll be posting these on all the socials out there. But again, thank you to everyone. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can obviously open up for just social chat. And thanks again, Dustin.